For those in the auditorium that were here 15 minutes ago, we did view a short video. That video is also online on UCRP for this meeting. So when you go to ucrp.org and you look at the meeting for today, at the bottom you'll see Thursday information, the video that we showed earlier, and their website information. Wendy Osborne took a few minutes just to answer a couple of questions, and she is available throughout today. If you would like to go chat with her for a few minutes. We're grateful for the many charitable organizations that surround us in our community, and I've been overwhelmed in looking into some of those here recently, how much we really have. United Way has about a 1-inch book they used to make almost every 2 months about all the services that are available that are here to help us, so we appreciate that. All right, so let's go ahead and begin our meeting today with prayer offered by Commissioner Danny Ainge. Tanner. That was put in here. We made a mistake. I'm reading my script. I know Tanner very well. So he'll give our prayer, and that'll be followed by Representative Marsha Judkins.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here today. We're grateful for this land in which we live and for the freedoms we enjoy, and for those who serve and sacrifice, especially those in our military, to allow us these freedoms. We pray that we can remember this today as we gather to discuss the issues and the principles that matter to us in our community. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
So the actual microphone, so you can keep going.
Will the audience please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner and Representative. The steering committee has set the agenda for the meeting. If you wish to add anything to the agenda, please wait until we reach that part of the new business portion in the agenda. Copies of the agenda are available outside if you need those. They're also on the website if you want to pull it up on the website. Today we'll be using Slido software for the questioning with the representatives that will be up here taking Q&A a little bit later in the meeting. If you have a device with you, you can actually submit your questions on that device, and so I'm going to give you 2-minute instruction on that right now. It's very simple. So if you have a phone with you, or a computer, or laptop, iPad, if you'll pull that out and go to the web, go to the internet, I recommend that you use your self-service to do that, since it's hardly doing anything on bandwidth usage. You have the website is Slido. Think of sliding down a hill, the word slide, just use O instead of E.com, slido.com. When you get to that site, very simply in the middle, it asks you for an event code. The event code is UCRP, just UCRP. Don't worry about caps or upper lower, just enter that. When you do that, you will be in the meeting. That's simple. There are 2 parts of that. There are questions and polls that you can toggle. And the poll, questions, is what you can submit. So right now, during the meeting, you can begin to submit questions you would like to ask the legislators. Those questions will be reviewed by our tech officer and Josh Daniels for appropriateness and to eliminate redundancy. And those will be pushed through to the legislators. The legislators will be looking at that between now and the time that they start to help divide who's going to present and give that information to you. So again, once questions are submitted and you like that question, you can give it a thumbs up. And the questions that have the most likes will move to the top, and they'll most likely answer them in that order. So if I ask a question that nobody likes, it most likely won't rise up to being answered unless we end up answering all the questions. So are there any problems or questions with that? Very simple site that's available for us to use at any of our meetings, or when legislators have town halls, or even congressmen have town halls here in the county. They can use this if they'd like. And again, it's a live event type software that works on the fly. We could have given that to you up to 7 days ago to start the questions, and so there's the opportunity to have that a little bit in advance. The first item of business on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 3rd, 2018 Central Committee meeting. The chair recognizes Party Secretary Heidi Balderree to present the minutes.
Copies of the prior meeting minutes were put online. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
All right, seeing no corrections, we'll go to move to adopt the minutes without objections, and therefore, seeing no objections to that adoption, the minutes are approved. We do have a representative from our federal delegation with us today, Representative or Congressman John Curtis. We will now turn some time over to him to give a brief update of his work in Washington on our behalf.
Thank you, Rob. Before I even begin, let me express my appreciation to Rob and his team for the work they do. We're very fortunate to have them. I very much enjoyed standing out there in the lobby with you for a few minutes and answering your questions and filling your support. I want you to know, above all that I share with you this morning, what an honor it is to serve you back in Washington, D.C. There are days literally when I walk around Washington and I look up at the Capitol and I say to myself, I get to work in there. How cool is that? And to represent you is just a great honor. Now, with that said, I heard on the news the other day that the approval rating for Congress is 13%. And I want you to know that I feel your frustration. I want you to know that every morning when I wake up and every night I go to bed, I think about how we can do a better job back there and represent you better. I'd like to share with you just briefly two bills that I've put in as a result of this shutdown. The first bill is called No Work, No Pay. What a novel concept. The bill says that if Congress goes into a shutdown, congressmen should not be paid. And I want you to... It just seems so obvious, doesn't it? And it's something that's very important. That bill every day picks up 2 or 3 new sponsors, and it's gaining momentum. The second bill is really the most important because it keeps us out of this situation. It's a bill that mirrors Utah. I want you to know almost every day I'm bragging about Utah back there in Washington, D.C. Utah, at the beginning of their legislative session, adopts a baseline budget with a tiny, tiny little haircut, meaning if they don't come to terms on their budget, instead of going into a shutdown, they revert back to last year's budget. This bill is very similar to that, but it puts a 5% haircut in, meaning instead of shutting down, we go on last year's budget minus 5%. If we go another 60 days without coming up with a budget, we lose another 2%. And every 60 days, we lose 2% of the budget. It keeps us from going into a shutdown. It's a really good bill, and if we could just do that one thing, it would dramatically change the way that we budget back there in Washington, D.C. Well, one thing was evident from my time out there in the hall with you. We need more time together. I love town hall meetings, and this morning it's become very clear to me that one of my very next town hall meetings needs to be just for the delegates here in Utah County. So look forward to that. We'll get some information out to you. If you're having a hard time following me, thank you. If you're having a hard time following me, I can see why. There's House ethics rules that mean that we can't, people that follow me on the campaign, I can't give them information about what's going on the official side. And people that follow me on the official side, I can't give them information about what's happening on the campaign side. So unfortunately, you need to follow me in two places. So the official side is curtis.house.gov. If you go there and sign up for the newsletter, you'll hear about town hall meetings, you'll hear about bills that we're doing. That's curtis.house.gov. And then the unofficial side, the campaign side, is johncurtis.org. Unfortunately, you need to go both those places and sign up for a newsletter to get all the information. Thank you very much for letting me be here with you today. Thank you for your good work, and thanks for all your help.
Thank you, Congressman Curtis. We do appreciate your willingness to be open and transparent and available. That's been important to us, and you've done as hard of work as anyone coming back and reporting, so thank you for being here today. If senators did not make it today, and so we'll now move on to the next section. With those members who are representing allied organizations, stand up for just a moment. Utah County Republican Women, is any of their leaders here? Okay, and is any of the Team College Republican chairs here or leadership? Okay, that's, okay. I heard they're out in the hall. Kind of like the young people. All right, so we also would like to ask all of our elected officials to please stand for just a moment and be recognized. Thank you. I will mention today, thank you, that one of the things we do is we learn in leadership in the party is sometimes we do things unintentionally. And today, we're required to have a meeting every quarter, and having that meeting every quarter sometimes creates some complications, such as today, where they have a March for Life at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and half the legislators are doing their last minute personal and business for their legislation as quick as they can, and that's making it difficult for some of them to be here today. We do excuse those that could not make it. There were quite a few that had conflicts today, and several that have conflicts also with other appointments and stuff. Sorry, I got thrown off for just a second. All right. We also want to represent or welcome the new county delegates and Central Committee members that are here as of their election. And there are 5 of those. If you are here, go ahead and stand. Amelia Powers, our new county clerk. David Levitt, county attorney. John Judkins, House District 57 representative, and Brady Brammer, House District 27 representative. Thank you on your successful win in your elections and now representing us. Rob Anderson, chairman of the state Republican Party, is at the RNC this week and has today flying from there directly to work, and he flies, so I don't know where he's going. So he was unable to make it here for the state party. We will now have a special privilege. How many in the room know Don Pay? If you'll raise your hands. Okay, a few of you, okay. Everyone will know you now today, Don, wherever you are. If you want to come on up, I'm going to turn the time over to you in just a minute. I've had the privilege of getting to know Don personally a little bit recently, and was not aware that we had someone in Utah that had a pretty tight relationship with the Trump family. And I'm going to let Don take 10 minutes here of the meeting and give you a perspective on the Trump family that I appreciated when he shared some of the things with me that he did. And we thought it would be a benefit for you to know a little bit about a side of our president. The media and others don't often give us an opportunity to see. And so we would like to turn 10 minutes over To you, Don.
Thanks. I'll get right to it. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'll try to entertain you, but give you some really kind of behind-the-scenes thing. As mentioned, I know the Trumps really, really well. And as a kid that grew up in Southwest Provo, that revered Danny Ainge, and I'm proud of Tanner for being a guy that can make millions, yet he's being a public servant, and Representative Curtis, thank you as well. So anyway, I didn't know this, but till a few years ago, but 1909, William Howard Taft came to the Provo Tabernacle, and that large man on the front row with the white beard, third from the left, was my great-great-grandfather, who was a prominent Provo businessman. All I knew, if you go to the next slide, is that a bad business still happened, and I grew up in poverty. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 6th grade. My father had to leave high school in the senior year, and things were pretty tough for the Pay family. And I didn't know about my great-grandfather, until later in the day. And I did see one letter. He said, after this disaster, he said, I'm going to try to make it so my kids can get an education and have a better life. And I always wanted to go to Harvard or Stanford just to compete with the best, couldn't afford to. But our oldest son did. And he's now leading one of these. I smelt billions of dollars as I come into Utah County today with all these tech firms. And he's pretty high up in that. So anyway, we're not rednecks. And actually, the way I hooked President Trump really quickly is I said, President Trump, or candidate Trump, when he had not even had the first race, I said, our oldest son, like you, didn't just go to Wharton, he finished in the top 10% of Wharton. So now I had his attention. Next slide. When I met Jeff Foxworthy, he's a good friend of mine. When he met my wife, he said, Don, you way outpunted your coverage. And I said, yes, sir, I did. But I'll tell you, the media, I'll say this carefully, a lot of times is the enemy of the people. And if you don't see what they did to those Catholic kids from Kentucky, I don't think you're awake. And I just know these are two really sweet ladies that love our country, and to see some of the abuse they take because their family or their husband involved in politics is pretty amazing. Next slide. I worked really hard to try to get me elected, and I worked a lot to make hunting great in Utah. Through that, I got to know the biggest guys in NASCAR, country music, rock and roll, pro sports, and we had a strategy, but it didn't quite work. Next slide. So I got a call one day from a friend. He said, Donald Trump Jr. uses my gear, and I told him that you could help his dad win the President of the United States. And I said, well, get him on the phone. So I got on the phone, and 10 minutes later, Donald Trump Jr. and his wife and 5 kids are coming out to Utah. They stayed at Sundance. 3 kids were sick. They flew in coach on Delta. We're at the Utah Valley Hospital at 1 in the morning, putting IVs in. Spencer Trump. Normal family, never know their dads. A billionaire, great, great family. Next slide. So this was a town hall meeting, and it was to talk about health care, immigration, taxes, the important stuff, and I just happened to stack it with sportsmen so Governor Herbert could understand something we cared about. And that's what I've learned to do, is to get hunters across the country, and we're not stupid rednecks. We go to Harvard, Stanford, Mayo Clinic, etc. And they're an undervalued, underrepresented group of people, and the media has trashed us when we're actually the keepers of wildlife, land, and water. But you never hear that. The environmentalists get all the credit. I've never put one nickel in anything of buying land, water, or helping our wildlife. Next slide, please. So this was January 2016. No race, and the president says, all right, I'm going to go with you guys. So next slide. It was hard to understand Trump, but when I really got to know who they were, I understood. You know, in some campaigns, there's 52 attorneys and lawyers that say, before you can do anything, you have to get all this. Trump's like, all right, Don, we know who you are, we trust you, go do it. Tell us what you need, but if you screw up, you're fired. Next slide. So I got a call, and he said, hey, my dad's not going to do the debate, the 15th debate before Iowa. We want to do a thing for veterans. And he said, can you get me some of your veteran friends? So this is a group of people there, some tremendous war heroes. And this was before the Iowa debate, when Trump did the unpolitically correct thing and skipped the debate going into Iowa. Next slide. Mark Geist. How many of you have seen Benghazi 13 Hours? If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. The man on the right is a man that can tell you He knows what it's like to be abandoned by his country. Mark is a good friend, and we got him on board. Next slide. So this is Nevada, and Trump had now lost Iowa, won New Hampshire, South Carolina, and this was the victory party. I mean, I was there in Iowa when there was like 6 people in the campaign. The family, Corey Lewandowski, Hope Hicks, and they took on the whole Republican machine. And that's the victory party, 5 of us in Nevada after they won. Next slide, please. So, coming into the Nevada primary, remember, Trump was going to get destroyed with the Latino vote. Well, I happened to go on a church mission. I speak fluent Spanish still. The kid bringing us to the hotel said, Don, he was a returned missionary from Chile, and we got talking. I said, who's going to win? He said, Trump. He says, the Latinos that are legally here in Vegas hate the illegals. And I asked him about, some of the people in the community. He said, yeah, we love Trump. So I told Junior that they were going to win. And when this came up, Trump 45, Rubio, Cruz, Junior put up there. Only one person I know called this first, and it wasn't a pundit. So I guess Junior kind of figured that I knew a little bit about politics. Next slide. The kid there on the left is Austin Dillon, won Daytona 500. His uncle Richard Childress is one of the biggest guys in NASCAR. Rob Keck, you don't know him, but he speaks to 5 million hunters every Saturday morning. We got them on the Trump team. Next slide. And we just went around the country talking to blue-collar people who probably never voted or voted Democrat. And Don Jr. speaks their language, and so does their dad. Next slide. It was pretty simple, and we tried to get other candidates to do this, but they were either afraid or weren't very smart. We just said, we're Hunter Orange and Camel. It sends a message. And so people laughed when they seen the president doing that. Next slide. I knew Trump were going to win because this is Don Jr. at a Bass Pro Shop. He would hold 4 rallies a day. Don Jr. had 5 times as many people to his rallies that Hillary did per day. That kid worked unbelievably hard, as did Eric, as did the whole family. Next slide. The election was determined by 11,000 votes in Michigan, 21,000 votes in Wisconsin, 32,000 votes in Pennsylvania. And we knew how many hunters. There's 500,000 to 1 million hunters in all those key states. And these were a group of coal miners from Pennsylvania that used to vote Democrat, got tired of their politics. And we spoke to them in their language. And I guess you know why the Trumps appreciate what we do, because they ran an incredible campaign. But Representative Curtis, it's always the last yard, right? That's the last yard. Next slide. We hooked him up with Craig Morgan, country music star. Craig's an incredible guy, tremendous Christian, Army Ranger. And the next slide. Ted Nugent's a good friend of mine. He's never done drugs, never done alcohol, has great kids, got a little bit of a potty mouth. But Ted had a rally in Michigan the night of the election, the night before, at midnight, 31,000 people in Michigan. And Ted Nugent was the headliner. All these guys are coming to my Hunt Expo in Salt Lake next month, and a few of you ought to come and meet these great guys. Next slide. So in September, things are looking a little tough, and Don Jr. is a dear close friend, personal of mine. He stays at our house. We went down to Temple Square and he said, Mr. Mack, when we win, we want the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to be front and center at my dad's inauguration. And he said, we love the principles of the Mormon people. A lot of them are good friends. They work hard. They believe in education, limited government, strong national security. And Max says, well, if he does, we can probably do something. Next slide. There you have 4-star General Robert Oakes. First graduate of the Air Force Academy. Yeah, Mark Geist, and I'll just say this in kind of a fun term. And please don't, we don't want to have a little joke. So as we're touring Temple Square, Don Jr. says, Don, as builders, my dad and I would love to go through the temple and see how you guys built this thing back in the 1800s. Next slide. Okay, so we're fighting, and this election was really about the Supreme Court. And the tapes came out, and everyone freaked out, and Orrin called and said, Don, you have to fight to the death, because if we lose this, we lose our country. Because if we lose and they get the Supreme Court, it's checkmate. And so those are 4 guys right there that stood there. Lane Bangeter, Uncle was Norm, Robert Oakes, Orrin Hatch and I, and we kind of took it on the chin for the whole state when everyone wanted to bail. Because we knew what this election was about. And is there any doubt what Trump's done with the Supreme Court? Next slide. Next slide, please. So, I get a call. President's won. You might recall there's a little controversy about who was going to play, and people, artists didn't want to come to the deal. And Henry Don Jr. just says, "Hey, my dad wants the choir to be front and center." And a little history in the background. President Clinton never invited him to his inauguration. President Obama didn't invite them to theirs. Reagan and Bush had him on the choir on a float out there somewhere. The president puts him right there. They swore in Pence. The choir sang. The President of the United States was sworn in. They keep their word. Next slide. I've been in places where there's no media, far off places of the world, and see how Don and Eric treat the average person, how they treat each other, how they treat their son. That little 7-year-old kid's the Trumps are genetic freaks, physically, mentally. I mean, that 7-year-old kid was on a trek that probably 90% of us couldn't even finish. This is up in the Arctic Circle, and what little D3 does is amazing. But I really know who these guys, they are incredibly wicked smart. And they're really kind too. Next slide. Like I say, Don Jr. and I have probably spent 70, 80 days in faraway places out on the campaign trail in tough situations when you're cold, wet, and tired, and you know who a person really is. And I just love that kid, and I will go to war for their family because I really know who they are. And we all should too. Next slide. Great father, loves his kids. And like I say, they're an amazing family. And I don't think people really realize how smart they are, how flat their organizations are, how they empower people to go get stuff done. Next slide. A little horseback trip up in British Columbia. Next slide. That's in Utah County. I mean, Junior spends a lot of time in Utah County. We don't want anyone to know, don't want the press. Just slip in, enjoy our skiing, our hunting, our fishing, camping. He loves Sundance. Next slide. Now this is a funny picture because if you look at the kid on the right, and I haven't lost anyone's attention yet, am I okay to just go a couple more minutes? The kid there, he's from a little town, Holden, Utah. And Junior loves to hunt with us, and we're down there above Price. He gets a text and says, "Hey, we got to find really good cell service." And so if Caitlin Lemon from Holden, Utah, that grew up in a really humble situations, if that look on his face says, "I can't believe that the President of the United States is calling his son while I'm sitting here in the truck." And to hear the conversation between the father and the son, and a lot of it was about a lot of the BS that you're seeing in the media, FBI, DOJ, WikiLeaks, etc. But at the end it's like, "Son, I love you so much, I'm so proud of you." And Junior says, "Dad, I love you." And so I guess if you look at all of the Trump children, how well they've all turned out. I think a lot of us believe the statement that by their fruits you shall know them. Tanner, you can probably give us this. What is the probability when you come from fame and fortune that 5 out of 5 kids turn out exceptionally well? Statistically, about 80% of kids from that environment are train wrecks. So think about that for a minute. Next slide. It's horrific what happened to Secretary Zinke. He stepped down basically because he couldn't personally afford to defend himself against 100 frivolous lawsuits. Here's a guy who fought in Fallujah. I wish I could tell you some of the stuff that he told me what he'd like to say about, or maybe do to some of the media, but I won't. But here's a guy who fought in Fallujah, and when he needed a helicopter, he jumped in a helicopter. When he needed a jet, he jumped in a jet. And a lot of the stuff that he got supposedly in trouble for was because he's a man running a $500 billion enterprise for the Western United States, and he didn't have time to screw around. He wanted to get stuff done. cabinet people loose. They all have G4s and choppers and do what they need to do. It's a huge business. They don't have time to fly coach commercial, especially in the West where you can't get from point A to point B. You can tell I'm a little passionate about this. Zinke is an incredible man. Next slide. A complex person that most people don't understand. I know what's in his heart. It's the last family on earth that needed to run for president. They did it because they love this country. Period. End of statement. It's not been a good deal for the business. It's not been a good deal for the freedom. It's not been a good deal for their family life. They love this country. Next slide. My father was in the military, and Audie Murphy was this bigger than life person. Right there's two Audie Murphys. John Wayne Walding got his leg blown off, tied a tourniquet on it, stayed in the fight. 38 of his friends are dead. I took him on a hunt on one leg. He's tougher than probably 90% of the college athletes. Mark Osgeist, like I said, if you haven't seen that, you need to see that. So I used to always, when I'd go to DC, I'd call my mother. My father died a long time ago. I'd say, Mom, kid from Southwest Roma's done pretty good, and I hope you're proud of me. And as I think of that picture of all the times I've walked the mall, I'm going to take one more minute, if I may. I used to run up the steps of the Capitol and look over the mall and think of all the history, the Jeffersons, the Washingtons, the struggles, the Civil War. And then after 9/11, they put a barrier up so you couldn't run up the south steps of the Capitol. And I said to the guy, I said, I want to run up those steps. And he says, you can't. And I said, what if I jump the steps and run up there? And he says, I have to kill you. And I thought, we have lost our freedom. How pathetic is that? So at any rate, those are some warriors. They're not afraid of the media. That's the team I've assembled, and a lot of the veterans are saying, we fought, bled, and died to have freedom. We're sure in hell not going to let a bunch of people in the United States destroy our country, because if we know history, that's how all civilizations crash. It's from within, not from without. So the last thing I will say is this. If I were to go into battle, I would rather be led, I would rather go in with a herd of lambs led by a lion than a pride of lion led by a sheep. Donald Trump's a lion. He's a little bit loud, but he is one tough guy. And I think Americans that love our Constitution, that love our freedom, that love our religious liberty, we all need to stand with him and help him drain the swamp. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm hearing something from someone.
I said, if we're destroying within, why do we need a wall? Why don't we shut down for that?
That's all important. Okay, we really appreciate you doing this today, Don, bringing a different and honest perspective of our president. The next item on the agenda, I can put out a poll on that if you'd like. The next item on the agenda for our business today is the office reports. At times in the past, questions have been raised during or at the end of the officer reports. Today we ask that you hold questions until later in the meeting. Please write down any questions you may have. And during the new business section of the agenda, we'll address those questions. Thank you. The chair will give his report first, followed by the other officers.
Point of personal privilege.
What is happening here?
Point of personal privilege, please.
Okay, where are you at? Right here?
Yes.
Can you walk up here?
That light puts you in a bad spot. So I haven't gone into the officer reports yet, and I'm going to do some business in that. But what does the member rise for?
Yes, Rayfield Millett,
Yes.
District Vice Chair.
Which one?
Which District Vice Chair?
Oh.
67.
Okay.
Yes, my personal privilege. Has the CME committee met already?
Yes.
That.
Yes, we have.
Okay, if the CME committee has met, then was that transparent? Was it To everyone, was it noticed?
Okay.
Was it noticed?
If members could address me, I'd be happy to keep things in a pretty good
Was it
level.
noticed?
So you're asking two questions. The first question was, did the CMP committee meet? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, so let me ask the CMP chair to come to a mic, please. Okay. So, I'm getting some advice from the parliamentarian that says that this particular item is not appropriate at this time.
I think it is not out of order. If they met and it was not noticed, that is not out of order.
There would be.
It wasn't noticed?
Let me just maintain a little order here. This gets fun, doesn't it? So the first thing, let me just do this. Let me just suggest that your timing is off, and that if you want to ask that question, that could be given at a different time. Because right now, in the middle of the reports, if any part of the report, yeah. And I'm just going to let you know two things in my report, and then take care of some business. And so,
Thank you.
if you'll stand, thank
Appreciate
you. Stand right if you want. 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, I stood up here as the treasurer of the party, planning on being done in April, feeling that I've put enough time in and I don't want to make this a career, and I'm happy to move on. Over the next several months, things changed, and obviously I'm here still. But the comment I made is just as valid today as I did 2 years ago. And that is, I'd like you to consider your time and season and where you can best offer your gifts. I'm always grateful to the volunteers in the party that give of their time. It's always challenging when we have 600 of you, when only 200 show. And I'm not sure where we're at today, but usually the December and Januaries are pretty lean. And you can see that by the attendance here. And so I have seen over the time of being involved in the party for the time that I've been here, how important it is to the functioning of the party, having people willing to share your talents and your time. And so I really, we all really appreciate each other for the work that you do. And I'm a believer in diversity, meaning I don't care what side of the party you're on, but your voice is important, and that we need to hear all of you. And I've tried to encourage that open communication throughout the time that I've been here, and always made myself available to you. So this year we are reorganizing. In April, you'll have a new leadership, or you'll have the opportunity to elect new leadership. You'll have the opportunity 3 months later to elect all new ledge chairs and vice chairs on your district levels. So there's a lot of changeover this year within the party. Now is a time that you want to begin to think of your thoughts and others, how you might want to see the party redevelop itself over the next several months. And because of time and the need to do what's most important today, I'm going to dispel any other comments, or dismiss from making any other comments. To the business part of what I need to do, since the last Central Committee meeting, where we elected new standing committee members, those committees have met and have nominated their chairs and vice chairs for each of the committees. Those nominees were ratified by the executive committee and are now brought before this body for final ratification. The nominees for the audit committee are Paul Thomas, chair, and Max Sims, vice chair. No, that's incorrect. Paul Thomas, chair, and
One person for me.
if I could, I know who the vice chair is. Mike Isom, there we go. So the vice chair was Mike Isom. And so, is there any discussion?
Can I ask now? One person privilege. Is it okay now?
Wait till new business after reports.
Okay, so what I've just done is present the audit committee, and the chair of the audit committee that has been nominated by the audit committee and approved through the executive committee now comes before you, and that is Paul Tonks as chair and Mike Eisen as vice chair. Is there any discussion on the audit committee chair and vice chair being ratified? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of ratification of these nominees say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Thank you. The ayes have it, and the nominees are ratified. The nominees for the Constitution and Bylaws Committee are Joy Smith, chair, and Michael Eisen, vice chair. There was a flip-flop, so I apologize in my script here. And so the vice chair is Max Dennis. All right, is there any discussion to those nominations? Okay, those in favor of ratification of these nominees say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the nominees are ratified. This concludes the chair's report. The next report will actually be from Josh to discuss our Lincoln Day dinner.
Friday, March 15th. Friday, March 15th. Put it in your calendars. That's the Ides of March. Friday, March 15th. Dennis Prager is going to be our speaker. Dennis Prager is very articulate, very motivating, very brilliant conservative commentator. It's going to be an excellent event. Plenty of time for you to plan ahead, buy tickets. They're going to be about $100 a person. We'll have some discounted pricing for early tickets. And it's really important that all of you and your friends and people in your precincts buy a ticket and come. Don't miss Dennis Prager. Friday, March 15th. The Ides of March is important. That's the day of the Roman New Year. That was a time in ancient Rome for settling debts. That's why they assassinated Julius Caesar that day. But that's a day for us as a party to settle some debts and hopefully bring in a lot of money. And so with your help, we hope to raise a lot of money for the next couple of years for the election cycle. If you know individuals in the community who would like to sponsor that event, please reach out to those people. Help us to raise money and make that a great event. Again, Friday, March 15th. UVU Ballroom is where that's going to take place. I'll take that question.
What website is this?
So this website is universe.com. So that's where you can purchase tickets. It's kind of like Eventbrite, but it's a different provider. Universe.com. We're going to have a link on our Facebook page to this as well. We're going to send this out via email, so be looking on some of those other channels so you can buy tickets online. Thank you.
We are excited about this. We're working on some other elements that I am not ready to be able to announce yet, but there's some other names that would excite you about the entertainment that night, but we have to wait until that's confirmed. In addition to this, we have been working with the UVU College Republicans, and our value and desire to improve the Republican Party in this county has been important. And one of the things that we want to do is help promote the Republican principles and conservatism among our young people. And so we have asked Dennis Prager to come early that day to give a second speech to college students. And that is currently in the works and approved, and we are working the details. So on that same day, college students and teens can go listen to Dennis Prager speak to them at their level at UVU on the same day. And so how many have 15-year-olds or college students that you'd love to have go listen to Dennis Prager for a small fee of $15? Okay. And there's a lot of interest throughout the state, on the state level, and the two colleges here, BYU and UVU, College Republicans, to have that event and fill the house. There'll be 850 seats available. and we will sell some of those seats to you. We recognize some of you have budgets that can't afford to maybe donate to the building and go to a fundraiser at the level that we price that and have that event. And then those who have a few dollars, $35, if you're not a college student or teenager, you can go and also attend that earlier speech. And they will be different speeches. Okay, moving on. The next item of business is Secretary, her report, Heidi Balderree.
I move the ratification of the foregoing list of new delegates and precinct officers. Michael Jackson, UCCB 1, Ledge District Chair 65, and Sabrina Hewitt, Precinct 2, Vice Chair.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to ratify the new delegates and precinct officers. Are there any discussions to that? All right, therefore we'll move to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, that's taken care of. Is it all the business you got done? Okay, so Treasurer David.
We completed the budget for 2018. It'll be posted, the budget versus actual, we posted on the website for review. I do have about 10 copies with me. We ran a $500 deficit for the year, which is pretty good on a light fundraising year. Our ending book balance for the year was $12,604, and we currently have $9,065 in the bank. I'm going to be presenting various changes to the bylaws and constitution with regards to how the treasurer function works, to update it to technologies and new business practices and best practices in order to benefit the organization long-term, such as online bookkeeping, things that will add to transparency and communications. Look for those changes here in the next little bit, in the next 30, 45 days, you'll start seeing some emails. We'd like to pick it up in the next meeting. If you have any questions, give me a call. Now, for the fun part you just love. Can I get a couple volunteers that have previously volunteered and a couple other people to help pass the hat? We have buckets, the clear buckets over here. And it would be wonderful if I could get 4 people that could help pass it and then count it with me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Josh and Heidi. We are now finished with that business and ready to move into the new business, and we would ask that the legislators please come to the stage. And again, remember Slido.com and UCRP for the event code if you would like to enter some questions or give your appreciation of other questions by giving them a thumbs up. Going into the questions right now, I can see that there are quite a few on the list, and in fact, at least 20 questions on this, and there are some questions that have 28 votes. So we appreciate you thumbing up the ones that you think are most important. What we're going to ask the legislators to do, so the time will go quick. I will not interject unless it's necessary, but here's kind of the ground rules for this part of our meeting. And thanks for your patience for this, to wait to this part for those who are excited for this. We welcome all legislators that are here that can stay for the next 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And we do have a hard stop at 10:30. Let me just mention, as we get close to that time will not be adjusted. It'll take a substantial amount of you to do that. But what we've asked and the legislators to do is, first of all, we need to recognize that many of them have conflicts today. And they will either leave early, like I believe Representative White may have already left, and for a conflict that he has, or weren't able to make it. But some of these will need to leave at 10:30. And so we will still adjourn the official meeting at 10:30. But for those, if there's enough engagement and there's at least a legislator available, We will continue for another few minutes and stop after that, but the meeting officially will be adjourned, and I'll note that at that time. And so what we will do is ask the legislators to review the questions. Hopefully you have been doing that a little bit, kind of teaming up and deciding who will take what on these questions. This will help it go a little bit quicker. And then the table itself of legislators will decide who takes the next question and just move down the line. We're going to ask for no follow-up on this because there's a lot of questions. And so if there's follow-up, we can get with them later. But if you'll just answer each question with one or two of you if necessary, like one might be for or opposed or a different viewpoint on that, and we don't all necessarily think alike. But we want to try to limit discussion to what's quick and efficient, and then go to the next question, and you at that table will govern that instead of me. So at this time, I will turn it over to the legislators to go to, and I'll just initiate the first question. Most have asked, will you be repealing Prop 3, Medicaid expansion? Who will take that one? Okay, go ahead. Make sure all the mics are on, please.
Representative Brad, and we kind of argue among ourselves, and I'll answer the first one. So the question is, will you be repealing Proposition 3, the Medicaid expansion? And the answer is more of we're going to replace that. The reason we have to do that is we did a fairly in-depth fiscal analysis on what Prop 3 would cost, and it doesn't, even with the tax increase in it, it's still, by 2021, it's still a budget buster. $65 million in the hole, very quickly on it. And so Prop 3 as it stands will, in fact, bust the state budget. And that's really no surprise. If you look at the state budget right now, you will see that Medicaid is the largest portion of the state budget. It used to be public education, but that has been eclipsed by Medicaid. So we have to do something. And what we have in place is we have a waiver already in place, which means we're not going to lose our place in line. We're going to modify that waiver with three very important things. Number one, we want to put in a work requirement. Now, we're optimistic about that because that actually just passed. Arizona's work requirement waiver just was granted. So we have every confidence that will happen. Number two is, rather than having Medicaid cover the entire 0 to 138% of federal poverty level, we're going to ask that the Medicaid cover 0 to 100%, and then above 100% to 138% will be covered by going to a federal exchange. And what that means is folks in that category can go to the exchange. They will get a subsidized health care plan based on where they're at, their income level is at. And it's actually a very nice plan. And the nice thing with the state is that's all federal money. So at the end of the day, the population that Proposition 3 desires to cover, strictly through, frankly, an Obamacare Medicaid expansion, we're going to cover, but we're going to do it in a way that we can manage fiscally. So that's the answer to question number one. And then I think Representative Christopherson, you're taking number two, is that right? I guess it's now number three.
And you can feel free to go out of order and just pick the questions among the top that you want to answer.
Okay, so Representative Christopherson, the question is, do you support or oppose Governor Herbert's proposed tax on services? Let me just give some background first. Governor Herbert is proposing that we restructure the taxes, and all of the details aren't worked out because he's just saying, let's have a discussion on this, but he's just saying in 4 or 5 years, the sales tax on goods won't be supplying the needs of the state, because over the years, the sales tax has gone from, I think, 60 or 70% of revenue down to 40%, and he's saying more of our economy is based on services. For example, things that we would have bought, like a video, now is streamed online. It's a service that way, and so we've seen that decline. And so he's just saying there's a structural problem that we need to solve. He's throwing that out, saying maybe we ought to look at taxing services. Some of the concerns I have is, if we're going to do that, we ought to say lower the tax rate and keep it broad. If we're going to tax one industry on services, we ought to look at everyone and eliminate exemptions and exceptions and credits. So that's a good discussion that's going to be held this year. There's a lot of input that still has to be given, a lot of discussion. The decision probably, I doubt will be made this session. I think it'll be a discussion that'll go over the interim. There's a lot of moving parts, and but that will be something that we look at pretty hard, not only this session, but over the interim and maybe into next year. But that's something that you need to be aware of. Hopefully, along with this, the governor said we want to lower the tax, the overall taxes. He wants to have a $200 million tax cut. So those are some of the parts of that. It's very it's incomplete at this point, so there's a lot of discussion to be had. Thank you.
What is your name again?
Kate Christopherson. Thanks.
Yeah, I have a question.
Just trying to go down the list here.
If you have a question, put it up on the
follow-up.
Is this a follow-up question?
We wanted to hold follow-up questions, and I know that there will be some, but we've asked to hold those so that we can continue to move forward. And we're kind of in agreement with the legislators that they'll get the best response they feel to try to minimize those.
All right, we're just again trying to figure out here. Civil asset forfeiture. Let me tell you, I cheated on this one a little bit. I went back and talked to former Representative Green, who has been a real champion in trying to reform civil asset forfeiture. As far as I know, there is no bill to completely do away with it, but there is a push in place to attach a more rigorous due process to it. So it has to be tied to a criminal conviction, that sort of thing. And if we can get that nexus put together properly, obviously we need to support that and make sure that we're not taking somebody's property who has not committed a crime and the property is not the proceeds of a crime. So that's the way we're moving on that. I'm not aware of what bill is going on this session, but that's what's happened in the past, and I believe there is an attempt to try to further reform that.
I want the next one. So I don't know if my name's Norman Thurston from District 64, but in my day job I work for the Health Department and the Center for Health Data, which is our sister agency is the Office of Vital Records and Statistics. And so we've had both at work and in the legislature some discussions about this birth certificate issue. Let me just give you a quick background as to what the issue is and then kind of give you my perspective as what needs to happen. So society, for some reason, which we're not really sure why this happened, has now given birth certificates a dual role. So one role of birth certificates, and where this all started, was as a historical record. It was to document what happened, when it happened, where it happened, who was involved, et cetera, et cetera. So we needed to document this baby was born on this day at this hospital. This was the doctor that attended. These are the parents, the mother, the father. This is the name that the parents gave the child, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was all recorded and put into a database. At some point down the road, birth certificate became a critical identity document, which kind of is okay, but it kind of doesn't make sense because, as you know, things change over time. Just a simple example is names. Over time, people change their names. They get court orders to change their names, or they get married and they change their name. And so the name that a person has today may not reflect what's on the birth certificate that was recorded at the time that they were born. And so that creates a real problem for people running birth registries because they have this dual role. They have to keep track of what happened, in my case in 1967, versus what is my current status, what is my current legal name, what is my current legal gender. So we've been struggling with that, trying to figure out what to do, because you don't want to erase history. You don't want to go back and say that baby was born and its parents gave it a name that they didn't give it, because there are things that happen between birth and when your name was changed, right? Similarly, there are things that happen between birth, and if somebody gets a legal gender change, which has become a thing, judges are now ordering that the person's gender can change, and so they're putting that order in. So what I would think we ought to do is we ought to have a system that recognizes the dual role, that says your birth record, the record that was made at the time the baby was born, is permanent. It doesn't change unless there was an error made at the time that was done. And we ought to have a separate process where you can get a document that says, this is my current legal status, this is my current legal name, this is my current legal gender. And if in the future, if other things can change by judges, I'm not aware of anything else, but maybe judges will start ordering that your age will change. I don't know. Who knows what judges will do? It's like there's something out there. But that's what I propose that we would do, is just say, look, we have a historical record which is fixed, and then we also have a process where you can get a document that says, this is my current legal name and my current legal gender and my current legal birth date. Now, that's where I think we ought to head. I think Representative Nelson's bill I think that's what it's intended to do. I'm not sure it actually does it. So I think we're going to have some interesting discussions about that going forward.
I have zero time, but that's exactly right. Anyway, so the upshot of this was Proposition 2. The way most people view that is we want to use cannabis for medicine, and we want to use it for people who need it and can benefit from it. Now, that's the way the people in my district saw it. That's the way I see it personally. That's what we want to do. The problem is that's not what Proposition 2 actually really did. Just to give you one example of the many pitfalls, U-turns, and problems with Prop 2 is the day that Prop 2 became legal, the day it became the law of the land. At that point in time, anybody could go buy marijuana on the black market, as long as they kept it under the limit specified in Prop 2, they would not be liable for prosecution, just because of the way it was written. All right, now that's the fact, because we had the head of DPS, Division of Public Safety, basically sent out a memo saying, don't bother arresting anybody for marijuana possession, we can't prosecute it. So that's a problem that I think pretty much nobody in this room would agree that that's a good idea. And so what we had to do, and what happened, is a small working group of proponents and people on the other side came together, and they hammered out a compromise that basically puts into place the idea of we're going to have a fairly controlled growing situation, we're going to have a very regulated processing arrangement, and it's going to be distributed through a central fill pharmacy, a state central fill pharmacy. That way we know what's happening, where it's going through, and who it's going to. And because we have a lot of rural areas in Utah, we're going to allow, in addition to specialty pharmacies along the Wasatch Front, distribution through departments of health in rural areas of Utah. That way, any potential patient would have fairly reasonable access to it. And so that's the way that the compromise was structured. We met the 2 days after the bill became law, and essentially repealed it and replaced it with this compromise that I think more accurately reflects the will of at least my constituents, and also I believe the will of the state of Utah, of we want to help those people who need access to cannabis and the benefits of cannabis without opening the floodgates for illegal and illicit use. So that's where it's at. And I think that answers probably 2 questions on there. There's 2 questions about Prop 2 and everything. Hopefully that gets both of them. So thank you.
Let me interject here before they go to the next question. Just a reminder that you can still thumbs up a question if you hadn't done that yet. There's more people in this room than thumbs have been done. So if you're looking at your questions, you can certainly move some of those up if you'd like. You can still ask questions. Please remember that they're state level questions, not federal or county, because they can't answer those. give an opinion, but they can't really answer effectively, so thanks.
Okay. Is this on? Okay, good. I was going to answer one that, I'm Marsha Judkins, Representative Marsha Judkins over House District 61. And I'm new, so this is all kind of like, wow, all this information coming at me at one time. But I'm doing my best to sift through. And I was looking through these, and I saw a couple that have some high votes on there. 22, this one has 22 in it. Are you in favor of changing our hate crimes legislation? What about equal protection under the law? Why should one victim be more important than another? And I think that's a really great question. I know that hate crimes legislation has come up multiple times during past sessions, and it's coming up again with Senator Thatcher's bill. And I've talked to him a long time about this. And I also wanted to add, when we're speaking, we're kind of speaking for ourselves. Even though we're all Republicans, we all have different ideas and different opinions. So if you have questions that one is asking and you want to know what another one of us actually thinks about that, it might be a little different or might be the same. So anyway, just throw that out there. So this is my opinion. I'm not putting this on anyone else. I am actually in favor of changing our hate crimes legislation. I know that's not always the popular thing. But when it says, what about equal protection under the law? Why should one victim be more important than another? And I don't think any victim is more important than another victim at all. And I've wrestled with this myself. But if a crime is committed against someone, but it's actually the purpose of that crime is to terrorize a group of people, then to me, that needs to be looked at differently. Most crimes, you can say all crimes are hate crimes, but for example, if somebody robs a bank, that's just a crime. They want money, maybe, I don't know what to do, but if they rob that same bank and they put swastikas all over the walls, and it's because the president of that bank is Jewish, and they write things all over the walls about that are anti-Semitic and are trying to terrorize that population. The reason I'm doing this is because of this. And I think that deserves to be looked at differently. That's an act of terror against that group of people, and is meant to intimidate more than just the other kind. So I would love to have your ideas and opinions about it, and you can talk with me. But sorry, what?
Okay, I think I'll take maybe the next. There's a couple here that are involved illegal immigration, and so one of the questions is a poll would be informative. So maybe just by a show of hands, how many people are in favor of a wall along the border? I thought as much. And how many people are not in favor of a wall? Okay, a small percentage by far. There's some questions about incentives for illegal immigrants. How do you disincentivize them? How do you make it so that they are not getting free services here in the U.S. where they're not a legal citizen? A lot of that's being addressed at the federal level. That's predominantly a federal issue. As you know, the border goes across multiple states. It's a tough one. We need good people here. I've had the opportunity in my professional life, as you know, this role we're in is a part-time role. We have regular full-time jobs. My full-time job, I've had the opportunity to be along the southern border. Actually walk with Border Patrol agents who are heavily armed along the border, fly along the border in aircraft to see the issues, go to the processing facilities where they deal with illegal immigrants, see the buses and buses, loads of people that they're deporting from the U.S., taking them back into Mexico. Talk with border agents and their experts in their control centers about how do you actually secure the border, what has to be done there, and there needs to be political willpower. It's a very divisive topic here in the U.S. We want good people to come here. We want immigrants, and we want it legally done. And I think that states my position, but this is predominantly a federal issue on illegal immigrants.
Okay, Representative Christopherson again. I wanted to address the question about what is the progress on the repeal of the Antiquities Act. And maybe I can talk about that a little bit, but I probably ought to defer to Congressman Curtis if he would like to address that. I don't know if he would or not, but let me just give you a little bit of background. The Antiquities Act, I think, has been abused from what it was meant to be. It's meant to protect the most vulnerable parts of our land and gave the president the ability to set, with speediness, to protect that land and keep some of the valuable artifacts from being destroyed. And I think that has been overused and abused, and so there's some effort in Congress to change that. So Congressman Curtis, would you like to help us with that?
Just that, okay, good. I was really enjoying them answering the questions. I could easily take an hour. I'll try to be brief. We have a number of bills in. Mike Lee has sponsored some on the Senate side, Rob Bishop on the House side. I'm a co-sponsor on the House side to try to get relief from the Antiquities Act. And that relief could come in a couple of ways. One is right now there are 2 states with exemptions to simply get Utah added to those exemptions. We have found we simply don't have the votes to get those moved forward. And so my office has been working very, very hard on both the San Juan and Emery County's public lands issues to see if we can get legislation through to resolve these. But it's clear that the Antiquities Act has been used as a big stick and is really a problem in these rural counties that are 90% federal land. And we'd love to get relief from it, and while we're working on that, we're running a parallel effort to try to get legislation through to resolve the public lands issues in those states, in those, counties.
Thank you for your help. You're welcome to stay here in case there are other questions.
I was just going to say the next question. The next question is a simple yes/no question. I just think each one of us can answer that. This is the question on HB 136 and 166. One is basically a ban on selective abortions if the child has Down syndrome, and the other one is a ban on abortions after 15 weeks. And so, just in the interest of full disclosure, I think we can all answer that. So my answer on those questions is I will be voting yes on both of them.
I'll be yes on both of them as well.
Yes on both.
Yes on both for me.
And I will be voting yes also, but I just wanted to add something that on the Down Syndrome Non-Discrimination Act, I know that there's language on there, because also the fiscally conservative side of it doesn't want to spend necessarily a lot of money on defending these when there's other laws that are in the courts right now that are being defended. And so there's language on that bill to say that it will only go into effect if other laws that are like that are now working their way through the courts are successful. And what? Yeah, trigger law. And I think the Sheriff's Life Act, I don't know, what do you think, Aaron? Should we put one of those on that also, or?
Well, things can be proposed in session, but I think that it's worth $1 to $2 million to save
Definitely.
lives.
It definitely is.
I think it should be told those people that are worth $2 million to save their lives, so they have something to sit back there.
Thank you.
If we can still hold comments, I know it's a temptation, but it'll get spun out if we keep doing it.
Yes. Okay, so I've got the next 2 questions regarding initiatives and referenda. So one of the things that we learned last year, I guess last year and a half or 2 years, is that our initiative process is subject to gamesmanship, and it's subject to the influence of people with a lot of money. So what I'm worried about is the way that it's structured today, and especially with the learning that happened last time around, literally anybody with a couple $1 million can buy a law. That really makes me nervous that we have set up a system where a corporation could come in, and you think, well, who's going to do that? I have been informed that Costco has allocated $23 million aimed at changing alcohol policy in the state of Utah. And if you don't think that Costco can do that, whether you agree that they should or they shouldn't, the question is, whether we should change it or not, the question is, should somebody be able to come in with $20 million and buy a law change? Just put the money on the table and buy a law change. So what I'm proposing, and this is only just a partial solution because there's a lot more to this that needs to be fixed, is on the initiative process. One of the concerns that I had last time around was that it wasn't transparent to anybody as to where things were in the process. And we've set ourselves up for a system where somebody proposing an initiative can just sit on all of those packets, wait and turn those in on the very last hour, and overwhelm the clerks. It will take them weeks to get those signatures all processed. And that way, the person proposing the initiative doesn't know where they are. Anybody who wants to know if their signature has been accepted or rejected doesn't know where they are. And anybody who's concerned about fraud doesn't know where we are either. So what I would propose in my bill is to change that so that it's a rolling horizon. That if a person is gathering signatures, whether you like it or not, they'd have to turn those signatures in within 14 days of the first signature on the packet. The clerks would process those immediately, and as soon as those signatures are either approved or rejected, it's made a public record. It's posted so that everybody knows these people's signatures were accepted, and that gives that person who signed it, or who somebody forged their signature, 45 days to change their mind or to go down to the clerk and say, hey, look, I didn't sign this, and if I did, I didn't intend to, get their signature off. And that would also allow everybody who's on any side of this issue their First Amendment right to campaign for or against people to sign it or not to sign it, or however they want to do it. It just removes one of the biggest gamesmanship issues that we have in this process, which is the possibility of holding on to those packets until the very last minute to turn them in and just dumping them on a county clerk and saying, okay, now you've got to process however many hundreds of thousands of signatures that you've got, and just watching the clock run out before they can actually get it done. So that's what I'm proposing. But the bigger issue that I don't know how to address is the one that I saw of misinformation. I had personally a signature gatherer come to me and ask me if I would sign a petition. I said, what's the petition about? And they said, your signing this petition will allow the citizens of Utah a bigger voice in government. Anybody want to guess which one that was? It was actually Prop 2. That's what it was. When I looked down, I saw it was Prop 2 medical marijuana. So that's how the medical marijuana initiative was presented to me, was by signing this petition, you will allow the citizens of our state a bigger voice in government. And so I don't know how we combat that so that a person signing the petition knows and agrees for sure with what they're signing. I don't know how we combat that. So if you have any ideas of how we can fix that so that people, I'm perfectly fine if people want to sign a petition, but I do believe that they should know and understand what they're signing, and I don't know how to fix that. So if you have suggestions, come up and talk with me later or send me an email saying, hey, here's how you could do it. I'd be happy to consider those.
If we could just pause before we take the next question. Does everybody understand how to vote for questions? You can move questions up in the priority list by going to slido.com. You got to use your cell phone network because the Wi-Fi here blocks the website. But if you use your cell network, go to slido.com, UCRP is the code, and you can do a thumbs up, and that will vote the questions higher. So you can both propose questions and vote for other questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be tackling the question, when will we be developing the Utah Lake area? There's been a lot of proposals for many, many years on ideas how to improve Utah Lake and use it better, help with the evaporation of the lake, maybe to reduce it, and transportation. So some of the proposals are to put a roadway across the lake between Saratoga Springs and Orem or Provo, a series of bridges and a causeway there. There was a fairly serious presentation to the legislature, I think it was a year or two ago, about a private firm that would take and dredge the lake at no taxpayer expense. They would dredge the lake, they'd use that material, and they would form some islands where there would be maybe some restaurants or something on one of them, and maybe a bird refuge on another one, and just different purposes that would increase the depth of the lake, which would maybe help clarify the water and to reduce the evaporation and to make it easier for recreation and to reduce algal blooms, and they would filter the water. They're still serious about that. I'm working with the state and the Utah Lake Commission on that presentation. It involves a lot of money, it involves a lot of entities, and this could go on for a long time, so we don't really have a date of when the lake will be developed. But those are some of the ideas that are floating around, some of the discussions. There are some serious debates on that, and a lot of ideas are being discussed. So who knows when that'll happen, and I'm sure that your input will be welcome as well. Thank you.
I'll take this next one. What do you think about spending $100 million on air pollution, which is in the governor's budget? And I think we can all agree that clean air is the best. I know that I'm all for clean air, and actually the state of Utah has been doing a lot to clean our air, and it is getting cleaner. Sometimes that's hard to see when we have an inversion or something, but we are doing so much better. We've been working really hard to get Tier 3 fuel here, and there's public-private partnerships that are working with like Union Pacific to get cleaner locomotive switchers that would really clean up the air, and there are really good efforts going on. And when you look at this $100 million, that's a really big number, and it'd be really nice to have some concrete plans in place as to, before just approving a number, I would want to see what are we doing with this money, and are these proven things, and you know, how would this be spent, and not just it's a nice big number, but let's see some concrete proposals about how that would be spent before I could approve that. You know, I'm all for clean air, just like I'm sure the rest of you are.
Okay, I think we're a little consensus up here. The next two, we're going to do just a yes/no across the board here to make it quick. So, are you in favor of removing the party straight vote from the ballot?
No.
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 The next one, I think we're going to go straight across as well. So, will you be supporting the repeal of SB 54?
That's a hard one. And as the new person, I don't know all the history that everybody else knows about this, but right now, I don't know. I don't have enough information because I've heard really good arguments on both sides. So yeah, everyone's like, but so I don't know.
I never did like SB 54, vote against it. I don't know, rather than, I mean, a lot of people are invested in that now that it's going, and I'd really like to just wait and see what the courts do first before saying where we got to go as a legislature. But I think the courts, it's in the courts, and hopefully the Supreme Court will accept it and hear it. And then we'll know whether it's constitutional or not. My personal feeling is is that the Republican Party is a private party, and they should have handled it directly. But anyway, we'll see.
I will be voting for its repeal.
I'm same as Representative Christopherson. I personally would like to see what the constitutionality issue to see that get resolved. But in the absence of that, I would rather just get rid of it.
I'm going to interject just for a moment. We're coming up in 3 minutes, and so I want to see the interest in the audience of staying a little longer after we adjourn, if you'd like to stay and continue for another 10-15 minutes. Those who would like to continue this for 10-15 minutes, raise your hand. Okay, so there's sufficient interest in staying a little longer. How many of you need to leave at 10:30 at the table? Okay, so you've already left if you did need to. Okay.
I just suggest those who want to go, just go. I mean, we can adjourn, but we'll stay after for a few minutes.
And that's what we're proposing. There's enough interest to stay and continue to do that. The meeting will be officially adjourned. This is just a conversation at this point. And so I will, instead of wasting 2 minutes of your time without objection, we'll adjourn 2 minutes early. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, thank you for your attendance today. We'll continue for a few more minutes.
So I just want to jump on this next one about a statewide initiative for preferential ballots on all elections. That combines two things. One, a statewide initiative. No thanks. I've had enough initiatives for a while. Let's let the legislature wrangle with this one. We've been dealing with preferential balloting. Right now, we have allowed municipalities to try ranked choice voting as an option. I believe there's at least one municipality that's going to do it this year, 2019. So I'm perfectly happy with the status quo, which is letting the cities opt in, and that will give us a chance to watch and see what happens. And I don't want to get into the theory of if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but from a policy perspective, I think we're in a pretty good spot, which is let's let cities opt in if they want to, and then watch and see what happens, see if problems arise that we can address in the future.
Let me just make a comment that we are no longer in an official central committee meeting, but we are now in a town hall meeting. And so just the courtesy of trying to keep your conversations outside the room so that everyone can hear that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. What efforts are there for low-income housing in Utah instead of suburban expansion? I don't have a lot of information on this. Hopefully I'll be better prepared to answer at the end of the session. Not enough, in my opinion. I think that the need for low-income housing in Utah is quite high. I just was meeting with the heads of United Way in Utah County and Salt Lake County. I think it was yesterday. There's been some meetings. I think it was yesterday. And I was enlightened on something with this. I thought it would enlighten you too. But I have felt that there is not enough, Utah County doesn't have a homeless shelter, right? So when someone's homeless and they need an immediate room, immediate help, it's really hard to find that help. And Salt Lake is our option of where to send someone who's homeless here. And so I thought that was a good place to push efforts, was to get a homeless shelter, to get those kinds of beds here. But what Bill Filterstrom explained to me is for one homeless shelter bed, if you want to move that person up and out of that, then you need to have multiple places for them to go. You need to have that low residential kind of housing, somewhere for them to go, maybe to take care of the issues that they might have or whatever. And then however many of those, you need an exponential amount of low-income housing, like this is talking about, that they can move into from there, because that one bed, if you want to have this be a temporary homeless situation, you're moving them up and out, and then the next tier is a longer stay, and the next tier is hopefully an even more permanent stay. And so we really, it made me shift my mind from let's get this homeless shelter, let's get a place for homeless people to go, a homeless shelter, to we really, really need to be working on getting enough of that, of of low-income housing and not even just subsidized necessarily, but housing that people can afford. So that's...
Okay, next question has to do with the tax changes and how they impacted families. So some of you will remember the Trump tax cuts. Trump tax cuts were a great deal for reducing federal income tax for families for the most part. For the vast majority of families with children, the Trump tax cuts actually did provide tax relief for families. Unfortunately, our state income tax code is tied to the federal income tax code in a way that when those tax cuts were made and those changes were made in the federal system, it caused a change in the way we do, and we didn't vote for this, it just happened because we are tied to the federal code. It actually increased state taxes on families with children. And in some cases, the state increase in income tax was actually more than the federal cut. So on net, we have families now who are paying more total tax, federal plus state, after the federal tax cut. That was not intended by anybody. It was certainly not intended by Congress, and it was certainly not intended by the state legislature. So there were some of us that recognized that during the process, and recognized that Utah was going to get additional income tax money as a result of the federal tax cuts. My preference was that Utah not accept that money, that we return that money to the families that were going to be harmed by this. We got part of the way there. It got tied up, however. It's really complicated because that extra income was going into the education fund, and so it was going to fund schools. And so it got because they wanted to raise extra money for schools. And so they realized, hey, wait, here's more money for schools. If we give that money back to the taxpayers, that's one less way of raising extra money for schools. When we had a budget surplus last summer, we came into special session and gave a partial refund back to those families. So there is some relief for the current year, for 2018, but we didn't give the full amount back. And I'm pretty sure that there will be an effort again this session to top that off, to make sure that those families get the full benefit of the federal tax cut that they were entitled to. I think that's the right thing to do. In fact, I have a bill file open, I don't know if we'll get it drafted or not, which says that in the future, if the state is ever the beneficiary of a windfall income tax due to changes in the federal tax code, that the legislature has to affirmatively appropriate those funds so that you will have us on record as to whether we voted to keep the money and spend it or whether we voted to give it back. Because right now, nobody voted for anything. It was just automatic. That money just came to the state and it got kept and we didn't give it back. And there's no record of how any legislator particularly felt about that. So my proposal would be in the future when that happens next time, that your legislators will have to vote whether to keep the money or give it back, and so that you will know where they are and that we make it a more transparent process.
All right, are you going to fix the state retirement? That's a good question. You need to understand that a few years ago, our state retirement system was fiscally upside down, and it was on its way, as has happened in many states, on its way to a giant big hole that we'd have to fill by either incredibly draconian cuts or huge tax increases. And so the legislature did what it does best in those times of challenge. We tackled the issue head on. Senator Dan Congressman, you may remember him, he went through, cleaned up the retirement system and put it on a sound fiscal footing. Now, in the process, that may have caused some issues with people that have been real challenges. So it's a moving target. It always has been, and it always will be. Retirement ages change, and different circumstances arise. And so if there is a pressing issue here, especially in the area of public safety, to either change the age, change the terms of service, or change the percentage, we're always looking to make sure that we're on top of that. But we always want to do it in a way that does not excessively burden our taxpayers, but still keeps our retirement system intact and fiscally sustainable. So I'm not aware of a specific bill this session, but clearly if there's a need to reform that and improve that so that we can improve our recruiting efforts for law enforcement, then we ought to take a very serious look at that.
Okay, I'm going to tackle two seemingly unrelated questions at once. One of them is how do we get people better informed about the importance of electoral college? And the highly related one is who will win the Super Bowl? So how are those related? They're actually quite related. There's probably more people who understand the Super Bowl and want to talk about the Super Bowl than they do about the electoral college. We have a lot of apathy. A lot of it's people are discouraged about politics. They're frustrated with Congress, especially right now with the government shutdown. So how do we get people more informed? I think each of us has a responsibility to help people be informed, to teach our children, to teach those around us, to teach those in the community, help them be informed. So how do we help people be informed? It's an individual responsibility. We should be out in our community, helping them understand the importance of their involvement, encouraging people to be involved, including them. We need to love people into the fold, if you will, of coming and being participants, and not by being upset, angry about differences of opinion, yelling, screaming. Those are not helpful, not productive. But if we can bring people into the process, help them have a nice communication about it, being able to talk about difficult topics that are hard without being, and disagree sometimes without being disagreeable, I think those will help us educate people in general about the process.
Okay, I'm going to take the one, is it more important to build infrastructure at a high cost to the people or to keep living costs for people low at a cost of not, for people low at the cost of not building infrastructure? In other words, do we spend a lot of money on infrastructure or do we keep taxes low? And, you know, that's why we have elections and voting and you know, it's the will of the people, what we want. I mean, do we want infrastructure? And infrastructure sometimes does cost quite a bit. What's the balance? You know, you've got to have some infrastructure, you've got to have costs low enough that people can still afford other costs besides taxes and live. So that's the big balance that we work on all the time. As our state grows, there's a bigger need for infrastructure with roads to connect people. Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs are growing like crazy, and they have a lot of collector roads and things like that. So there's a big need for that. Also, you know, we're sensitive to the fact that people have a lot of demands on their money, and you know, there's housing costs. So I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. I think we just have to say there's a balance somewhere, and the political process helps to get that balance through the debates, through the committee meetings, through input from the community. There's a lot of ways that reaches a balance. In each election there's a balance as well. So we'll try to reach that balance.
Okay, I'll go with, what is your current position on Convention of States? Are there plans to pass at this session? I know that there is. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Convention of States, and I'm probably one of the least familiar myself with this group, but there is a plan to pass and support having a Convention of States. And it would be for the purpose of term limits. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Term limits and balanced budget, things to try to control what's going on in the federal government, try to rein in some of what's happening in the federal government, which I think is a very noble idea to, because we can all see that there are parts of the federal government that are really a mess. And I know that some of my colleagues up here, I support it. I mean, we can go through and say our pieces here, but right now I don't support calling a Convention of States. I am open to hearing other people's ideas about it. But I think that the problems in Washington are pretty complex, and it would take more. I don't think the answer is as simple as term limits or asking them to have a balanced budget. And so, anyway, go ahead and speak to it.
Thank you. I have a little bit different angle on this. There's two ways to propose amendments. One is Congress does it, and Article 5 gives the ability to the states to propose an amendment. And the reason that was introduced was because the founders felt like if Congress wasn't accomplishing the responsibility which the states form the federal government, and if that gets out of control, the only remedy the states have is to say, we're going to call a convention and make amendments or propose amendments. And the process is the same after that for both Congress proposing amendment and the states proposing amendment. 3/4 of the states have to ratify that before it becomes law. And so right now, Congress is pretty dysfunctional, I guess is a good word. And our national debt is 22 trillion and rising. When do we fall off the cliff? And I'm thinking, there are some issues that need to be dealt with that Congress isn't dealing with. And the states have to protect themselves, and they have that opportunity through convention. And some people are afraid of what will happen in convention. And I'm just saying, we have that opportunity and that right as a state to protect ourselves. What I'm worried about, not a runaway convention, I'm worried about a runaway Congress for what's going on right now. I'm saying we as states need to fix it, and I know the legislatures in the other states, and I trust the legislatures in the states because they see, the rubber meets the road there, and they see the consequences of Congress's inability to act. And so, to me, I think it's a lot safer process than most people think. It's a high bar for 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment. And I think we've got to do something with our national debt. We're going to be in real deep trouble, and we're passing along problems to our children, our grandchildren, and it's going to be a tough hold to dig out.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. Let's give our legislators a round of applause. And there were a few outstanding questions that were yes and no, so we can just run through them really quick, and you can just do yes, no, yes, no. So here's the first one. Are you going to go to the March for Life the March for Life at the Capitol this afternoon?
I want to, but I have a family commitment.
Ditto that. I've been out of town for the last week. I need to be home with my family today.
I'm highly supportive and will support the legislation, but I can't make the rally.
I'm going to try to get up there if I can.
I'm trying to get up there. I have a meeting right after here for about a couple hours, and I have to be back in Provo at 3, but I'm going to try to go for it.
Well, we're grateful to all you've done for the pro-life agenda. I know all of you've worked for that. I think that was a secret question to invite everybody else to the rally. All right, number 2, do you support the state doing something to impose some kind of term limits on the federal officials?
No.
I'm in support of that.
Term limits are not the right solution.
I think that we can vote for term limit. I mean, we can vote people out. That's the term limit.
Me too.
And then there's going to be apparently a motorcycle lane filtering law this session. This is where you allow motorcycles to lane share and kind of go around cars during slower traffic. Would you support something like that, yes or no?
I would have to see some data on safety and stuff. I live in California where they do that. I don't know.
I don't mind lane sharing. I've voted for that before. I don't like it where when slow traffic, everybody shoots through the gap. I don't like that part of it.
I won't support it. The reason it was passed in California is no longer relevant, and it's an incredibly dangerous practice.
I'm inclined to wait and see some of the data. I think I'll probably lean towards the safety case, and that's likely to be opposed to it.
I have been opposed to it. I'm willing to change my mind if I see data that shows that it can be done safely, but I have been opposed in the past.
And then one last yes or no is, how do you feel, would you support or oppose really for yes or no, just removing political affiliation of candidates on the ballot so that you wouldn't have party affiliation on the ballot? Is that something you would support, yes or no?
I would not. It would just increase the cost of elections.
I'm not supportive. I like to see the general tendencies and leanings of people. It's very difficult to determine what people think on the issues, and this is at least one flag, giving you a rough idea of what their political leanings are. It's helpful.
I won't support it.
I don't like it either.
I don't support it.
Great, thank you. So we got through a lot of questions. Again, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming. Let's give them another round of applause.